The seed that refuses to sprout in haste will become the mightiest tree. In the village of Umuada, where the red earth held secrets older than memory, there lived a woman named Ngozi. For 8 years, she had been married to Obi, a good man with patient eyes. 8 years of waking before dawn to fetch water. 8 years of pounding yam until her arms ached. 8 years of praying in whispers that only the wind could hear. 8 years, and her womb remained silent. The other women knew. Oh, how they knew. They counted the seasons on their fingers, whispering behind clay pots and during trips to the stream. They watched her belly the way hawks watch field mice, searching for any sign of swelling that never came. Have you ever been judged for something beyond your control? If this story touches your heart, subscribe to Tales by Sammuff and join our family. Comment below where you're watching from. Let's connect across borders. It was market day when the mockery cut deepest. Ngozi balanced a basket of vegetables on her head, walking through the crowded marketplace where the smell of roasted plantain mixed with red palm oil. The sun was high, casting short shadows on the dusty ground. She needed to buy salt and dried fish for the evening meal. Ngozi, a voice called out, sweet as honey but sharp as a blade. She turned to see Obiageli, the chief's third wife, surrounded by her usual circle of women. Each of them carried bobbies on their backs or held toddlers by the hand. Their wrappers were bright with expensive dye, and their necks gleamed with coral beads. We did not see you at the naming ceremony yesterday, Obiageli said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Oh, but of course. You would not understand such joy, would you? The other women giggled behind their hands. Ngozi's grip tightened on her basket. I was tending to Elder Nwasu. His fever had returned. Always tending to other people's problems, another woman chimed in. Perhaps if you spent more time being a proper wife, the gods would bless your womb. My sister had her 5th child last moon, Obiageli continued, circling Ngozi like a predator. 5 healthy children, while you... She paused dramatically, looking Ngozi up and down. 8 years, is it not? 8 whole years and nothing to show for it. Perhaps your husband should take a younger wife, a fertile one. The words landed like stones. Each woman in the circle nodded, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and contempt. Behind them, other market women paused their haggling to watch the spectacle. Some shook their heads in sympathy for Obi, married to a woman whose womb was closed. Ngozi stood tall, though her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. The gods work in their own time, not ours. The gods, Obiageli laughed. My dear, the gods abandoned you. Face the truth, you are barren, a tree that bears no fruit, a river that has run dry. What use is a woman who cannot give her husband children? The marketplace seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stopped moving through the palm trees. Ngozi felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these women who fed on her pain like vultures on carrion. She adjusted her basket and walked away, her head still high despite the laughter that followed her like a curse. That evening, Ngozi sat alone by the village stream, her feet dangling in the cool water. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In her hands, she held a small carved wooden doll, something she had made herself during the lonely afternoons when other women nursed their bobbies. Why, she whispered to the darkening sky, what have I done to deserve this shame? The water rippled around her feet, but gave no answer. She thought of Obi, her husband, who never blamed her but whose eyes grew sadder with each passing season. She thought of his mother, who had long since stopped hiding her disappointment. She thought of the empty mat in their hut, the corner where a child's laughter should have echoed but never did. As she sat there, lost in her sorrow, she did not notice the old woman approaching from the forest path. Child, a cracked voice called out. Ngozi looked up, startled. The woman before her was ancient, her back bent with age, her wrapper faded and worn. But her eyes were clear and sharp, like polished stones that could see through time itself. Mama, Ngozi said respectfully, recognizing her as Nneni Mgbike, a woman so old that even the elders spoke of her with reverence. Some said she had lived through 3 generations. Others whispered she was touched by the spirits. "I heard what happened in the market today," the old woman said, settling herself on a nearby rock with surprising grace. "I heard how they mocked you." Ngozi looked away, ashamed. "The whole village has heard by now." "And what do you think, child? Do you believe their words, that you are cursed, that you are worthless?" Ngozi's voice broke. "I do not know what to believe anymore, Mama. 8 years. 8 years of prayers and sacrifices and hope. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am cursed." Eneni Mgbk was quiet for a long moment, studying Ngozi with those ancient eyes. Then she spoke, her voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to carry the weight of prophecy. "Tell me, child, when a farmer plants a seed, does it sprout the next day?" "No, Mama." "And when the great Iroko tree stands in the forest, tall enough to touch the clouds, did it grow in a single season?" "No, Mama." "Then why," the old woman said, leaning forward, "do you think destiny works any faster? Some blessings take time to root. Some purposes require preparation. Your womb may be empty, Ngozi, but your hands—" She reached out and touched Ngozi's palms. "Your hands carry a gift that not even you fully understand yet." Ngozi stared at her hands, confused. "What gift, Mama? I am nothing special." "That," Eneni Mgbk said with a mysterious smile, "is what everyone believes. But I have lived long enough to know that the gods do not make mistakes. What they withhold in one place, they multiply in another. Your story, child, is far from over. In fact—" She stood up slowly, her bones creaking like old wood. "It has not truly begun." Before Ngozi could ask what she meant, the old woman had disappeared back into the forest path, leaving only the scent of burning herbs and the echo of her words hanging in the twilight air. Ngozi sat by the stream until the first stars appeared, turning the old woman's words over in her mind like seeds waiting to be planted. What gift could she possibly have? What purpose could require 8 years of shame and mockery? And why did Eneni Mgbk's eyes hold such certainty about a future that Ngozi herself could not see? The questions followed her home through the darkening village, where lamps were being lit in huts, and mothers were singing their children to sleep, mothers who would never know what it felt like to walk through life with empty arms and a heart full of unanswered prayers. But somewhere in the darkness, destiny was already moving. Like a seed buried deep in the earth, invisible to human eyes, waiting for the exact right moment to break through the soil and reach toward the light. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more tales by Sammuff. What do you think Eneni Mgbk meant about Ngozi's gift? What is destiny preparing her for? Comment below. We read every single one. Not all wombs carry children, some carry nations. Elders' wisdom. 3 days after her encounter with Eneni Mgbk, Ngozi woke before dawn to the sound of desperate knocking. "Please, somebody help us," a man's voice cried out in the darkness. "Our child is dying." Obi was already at the door before Ngozi could untangle herself from her sleeping mat. Through the doorway, she saw Emeka, one of the village farmers, his eyes wild with terror, his wrapper hastily tied around his waist. "It is my daughter, Chidinma," he gasped. "She burns with fever. Her mother has tried everything, herbs, cold water, prayers, nothing works. The child cannot even open her eyes anymore. We have been to the medicine man, but he says—" His voice broke. "He says there is nothing more he can do, that we should prepare ourselves." Obi looked back at Ngozi, uncertainty in his eyes. Everyone knew his wife had a way with the sick, a gentleness that seemed to ease suffering. But a dying child? That was beyond simple herb knowledge. Ngozi was already reaching for her wrapper. "Take me to her." As they hurried through the sleeping village, the first gray light of dawn was just beginning to soften the darkness. Emeka's compound was on the far edge of Umuada, and by the time they arrived, Ngozi's heart was pounding, though whether from the running or from fear, she could not tell. Inside the hut, the air was thick with the smell of sickness and burning incense. Chidinma lay on a mat, her small body trembling despite the blankets piled on top of her. Her mother, Nkechai, knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face. "She will not wake," Ngozi sobbed. "My baby will not wake." Ngozi knelt beside the child, placing her hand gently on the little girl's forehead. The heat radiating from her skin was frightening, like touching a cooking pot left too long on the fire. But as Ngozi's palm made contact, something strange happened. A tingling sensation ran up her arm, warm and electric. It was as if her hand had suddenly awakened after a long sleep. Without understanding why, Ngozi closed her eyes and kept her hand steady on the child's burning skin. In her mind, images flashed, not pictures exactly, but feelings, knowledge that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. She saw the sickness like a dark shadow wrapped around the child's spirit. She felt the exact herbs needed, their names appearing in her thoughts like whispered secrets. Bitter leaf, uses a roots, a specific type of bark from the Iroko tree. "Bring me these," Ngozi said quietly, her eyes still closed, and she listed each ingredient with perfect certainty. Emeka stared at her. "But, how do you know?" The medicine man did not mention. "Please," Ngozi interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Trust me." There was something in her tone, something ancient and assured, that made Emeka run to gather what she needed. While he was gone, Ngozi kept her hands on the child, and slowly, impossibly, the trembling began to ease. The fever did not break immediately, but the child's breathing grew less labored. Ngozi watched in amazement as color began to return to her daughter's gray lips. When Emeka returned with the herbs, Ngozi prepared them with movements that seemed to come from muscle memory she did not know she possessed. She crushed the bitter leaf with the yuzuza roots, added shavings from the Iroko bark, and mixed everything with pure water from the stream. As she worked, she hummed, a melody she had never heard before but somehow knew by heart. She lifted the child's head gently and poured small amounts of the mixture between her lips. Once, twice, 3 times. Then she placed both hands on Chidinma's chest and closed her eyes again. This time, the warmth in her palms grew stronger, spreading like sunlight through her entire body. She felt it flow through her arms, down into her hands, and into the child beneath them. The hut fell silent, except for Ngozi's soft humming. Minutes passed like hours. Then, like a flower opening to the morning sun, Chidinma's eyes fluttered open. "Mama," the child whispered, her voice weak but clear. Ngozi screamed with joy, pulling her daughter into her arms and sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Emeka fell to his knees, thanking the gods and thanking Ngozi in the same breath. But Ngozi sat back, trembling, staring at her own hands as if seeing them for the first time. What had just happened? What was this power that moved through her like water through a riverbed? "You saved her," Ngozi wept, reaching out to grasp Ngozi's hand. "You brought my child back from the edge of death. How can we ever repay you?" "There is no debt," Ngozi said softly, still dazed. "I only did what I felt I should do." As dawn fully broke over the village, Ngozi walked home alone, her mind spinning. She looked at her hands in the growing light ordinary hands, calloused from work, with short nails and thin fingers. Yet somehow, these hands had pulled a child back from death's door. She remembered Nneni Mjibika's words. "Your hands carry a gift that not even you fully understand yet." Was this the gift the old woman had spoken of? This ability to see sickness and know its cure? This warmth that flowed through her palms like liquid sunlight? News of Chidinma's healing spread through Umuada like wildfire. By midday, 3 more people had come to Ngozi's hut seeking help. An elderly man with pain in his joints. A young woman whose monthly bleeding would not stop. A farmer who had been coughing for weeks. Ngozi helped them all. Each time she touched someone in need, the same thing happened, that tingling warmth, that sudden knowledge of what was wrong and how to fix it. Her hands seemed to know things her mind did not. They moved with confidence and certainty, mixing herbs, applying pressure to specific points on the body, drawing out pain and sickness like pulling splinters from wood. But with each healing, Ngozi felt something else too, exhaustion that ran deeper than physical tiredness. It was as if each person she helped took a small piece of her energy, her life force. By evening, she could barely stand. Obi found her sitting outside their hut, her head in her hands. "The whole village is talking about you," he said, sitting beside her. "They are calling you a healer. Some even say you are blessed by the gods." Ngozi laughed bitterly. "Blessed? The same people who mocked me 3 days ago for being barren now call me blessed." "People are fickle," Obi said gently. "You know this." "But why?" Ngozi looked at her husband, tears gathering in her eyes. "Why would the gods give me this gift but deny me the one thing every woman is supposed to have? Why can I heal other people's children but cannot carry my own? What kind of blessing is this?" Obi had no answer. He simply put his arm around her shoulders and held her as she cried. Neither of them noticed Obiagely watching from a distance, her eyes narrow with something that looked very much like fear mixed with jealousy. That night, Ngozi dreamed. In her dream, she stood in a great hall filled with light. Before her stood Nneni Mgbk, but the old woman was transformed younger, taller, radiating power like the sun at noon. "Do you understand now?" the dream woman asked. "Understand what?" Ngozi whispered. "Why your womb is empty, why your arms have carried no child. You were not made to be mother to one, Ngozi. You were made to be mother to many, healer of the sick, hope for the hopeless. You cannot pour water from a vessel that is already full." "But I want a child," Ngozi sobbed. "Just one, is that too much to ask?" The dream woman's expression softened. "Destiny is not punishment, child, it is purpose. And your purpose, your purpose is greater than you can imagine, but it will cost you. Great gifts always do. The question is, are you willing to pay the price?" Before Ngozi could answer, she woke to find morning light streaming through the doorway and another group of sick people waiting outside her hut. Her gift had only just been revealed, and already it was changing everything. But the real test, the moment that would shake the entire village and prove Nneni Mgbk's prophecy true, was still to come. When the river begins to flow uphill, both the grateful and the envious will gather at its banks. Umuada proverb. 2 weeks had passed since Ngozi healed Chidinma, and the world as she knew it had completely transformed. Every morning, before the cock could finish its first crow, people lined up outside her compound. They came from Umuada and beyond, from neighboring villages whose names Ngozi had only heard in passing. The sick, the dying, the desperate. They all sought the woman whose hands carried miracles. An old woman who had been blind for 10 years could suddenly see her grandchildren's faces. A young man paralyzed from a farming accident stood and walked after Ngozi spent an hour with her hands on his spine. A baby born too early, too small, whom everyone said would not survive the week, grew strong and healthy under Ngozi's care. The gifts kept flowing from her hands like water from an endless spring. But with each healing, Ngozi felt herself diminishing. Not in body exactly, but in spirit. It was as if every person she touched took a thread from the fabric of her own life force and wove it into theirs. By each nightfall, she collapsed on her sleeping mat, so exhausted she could barely eat the food Obi prepared for her. "You must rest," Obi pleaded with her one evening, watching his wife's hands tremble as she tried to lift a cup of water to her lips. "You are killing yourself to save others." "How can I rest when they need me?" Ngozi whispered, her voice hoarse. "You should have seen the child they brought today, barely 3 years old with a sickness in his chest that made every breath sound like drowning. His mother walked for 2 days to reach me. 2 days, Obi. How could I turn her away?" "And what happens when you have nothing left to give?" Obi asked, his voice breaking. "What happens when you pour yourself out completely and there is nothing remaining? Who will heal you, Ngozi?" But Ngozi had no answer. She only knew that when she looked into the eyes of sick children, she saw the bobbies she never had. When she held the hands of desperate mothers, she felt the motherhood that had been denied to her finding expression in a different form. Her empty womb had become an empty vessel that the universe filled with a different kind of love, vast, impersonal, and utterly exhausting. Have you ever sacrificed yourself for others until you had nothing left? Drop a comment and share your story. And if you're finding wisdom in Ngozi's journey, subscribe to Tales by Sammuff. We're building a family of truth seekers across the world. Not everyone celebrated Ngozi's gift. In the chief's compound, Obiagely sat among her circle of wives and friends, her face twisted with an emotion that looked remarkably like rage disguised as concern. "It is not natural," she said, her voice dripping with false worry. "No woman should have such power. Have you noticed how thin she has become? How her eyes have that strange, distant look? I tell you, this is not a gift from the gods. This is something darker." The women around her exchanged nervous glances. "But she has healed so many people," one of them ventured. "My own sister's son." "Exactly," Obiagely interrupted. "She heals, yes, but at what cost? Think about it, my sisters. For 8 years her womb was closed, barren and empty. Then suddenly she has this power. Does that not seem suspicious to you? Perhaps she made a bargain with the night spirits. Perhaps she traded her fertility for this ability. Perhaps," she lowered her voice to a whisper, "perhaps she is a witch." The word hung in the air like smoke from a bitter fire. "We should not speak such things," another woman said, but her voice was uncertain. "Should we not?" Obiagely leaned forward. "My husband, the chief, says that power without explanation is power to be feared, and I fear for our village. What if her gift turns dark? What if she decides to harm instead of heal? Who could stop her?" Seeds of doubt, once planted, grow quickly in the garden of gossip. By the next market day, whispers followed Ngozi wherever she walked. Women who had once thanked her now made protective signs behind her back. Mothers pulled their children closer when she passed. The word witch was never spoken directly to her face, but it floated through the air like an invisible poison. Ngozi felt the change but said nothing. She continued her work, continued healing whoever came to her, continued pouring herself out like water onto dry ground. It was on the 21st day, after her gift had awakened, that everything came to a head. The chief's youngest son, Dubum, fell ill. It started with a simple fever, nothing unusual for a child of 6 years. But within hours, the fever spiked so high that Dubum began having seizures. His small body convulsed on his sleeping mat while his mother, the chief's first wife, screamed for help. The village medicine man came with his strongest herbs and his most powerful charms. He burned incense and chanted prayers. He called upon the ancestors and made sacrifices to the gods, but nothing worked. Dubum's condition only worsened. By evening, the child was barely breathing. The chief, a proud man who had ruled Umuada for 20 years, paced outside his son's hut like a caged animal. His wives wept. The elders gathered, their faces grave. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew what needed to be done. But no one wanted to be the first to say it. Finally, Elder Nnamdi, the oldest man in the village council, cleared his throat. "My chief," he said carefully, "there is one who might save the boy, one whose hands have pulled many from death's doorway." The chief stopped packing, his jaw clenched. "You speak of the barren woman, of Ngozi." "I speak of a healer," Elder Nnamdi said firmly. "Whatever else she may or may not be, she has proven her ability. Your son is dying, my chief. Pride is a luxury the living can afford. The dying cannot." The other elders murmured their agreement. The chief looked at his son's hut, where his wives' wailing had grown louder. He thought of Dubum's laughter, the way the boy ran through the compound chasing chickens, the way he had just started learning to help with the yam harvest. He thought of all the plans he had for his youngest son, all the futures that would die if the child died. "Bring her," he said finally, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "Bring Ngozi." Ngozi was sleeping when they came for her. The exhaustion from healing 12 people that day had finally pulled her under. But when she heard the urgency in the messenger's voice, when she heard that a child was dying, she pushed herself to her feet despite her body's protests. Obi tried to stop her. "You can barely stand. You need rest more than." "A child," Ngozi said simply. "A child is dying, Obi." And that was the end of the discussion. When Ngozi entered the chief's compound, she felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. The chief stood in the center of his courtyard, surrounded by his wives, his elders, and what seemed like half the village. In the firelight, Their faces were a mixture of hope and suspicion. Obiageli was there too, standing just behind the chief's shoulder, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes burning with something cold and hard. "My son is dying," the chief said without preamble. "The medicine man has tried everything. If you can save him—" He paused, pride and desperation warring on his face. "If you can save him, I will give you anything within my power to grant. Land, gold, influence." Ngozi shook her head. "I do not heal for payment, my chief. I heal because I must. Take me to your son." The crowd parted as she walked toward Dubum's hut. Behind her, she heard Obiageli's voice, pitched low but meant to carry. "I hope we do not all regret this. I hope the price of this healing is not more than we can afford to pay." Inside the hut, Dubum lay motionless except for the shallow, rapid rise and fall of his chest. His skin was gray, his lips blue. Death was already in the room, and Ngozi could feel it, a cold presence hovering over the child like a shadow. She knelt beside him and placed her hands on his burning forehead. The familiar tingling began, but this time it was different. This time, the warmth in her hands struggled to flow. It was as if she was trying to push water uphill. The sickness inside this child was darker, deeper, stronger than anything she had encountered before. Ngozi closed her eyes and pushed harder, reaching deeper into whatever well of power existed within her. She felt it resist, felt her own life force beginning to drain away not in threads but in rivers. Sweat broke out on her forehead. Her breathing became labored. In her mind, she saw the sickness clearly now, not just fever, but something else. Something that looked almost intentional, almost placed there. A curse, or perhaps just bad fortune shaped like a curse. Either way, it clung to the child's spirit like tar. To save him, she would have to give more than she had ever given before. She would have to reach so deep into her own essence that she might not find her way back. Behind her, the chief's wives held their breath. The elders watched in silence, and Obiageli waited with an expression that might have been hope for the child's death disguised as prayer for his survival. Ngozi thought of all the children she had healed, all the mothers who could now hold their babies, all the families made whole by her touch. If she stopped now, if she held something back to preserve herself, this child would die. And in dying, he would take something from her that no amount of self-preservation could protect, her sense of purpose, her reason for existing despite the mockery and loneliness. So she made her choice. She opened herself completely, let the power flow through her like a river breaking through a dam. She felt it pour out of her hands and into the dying child, felt it chase away the darkness, felt it wrap around his small spirit and pull him back from the edge of nothingness. The warmth grew so intense it was almost painful. Her vision blurred. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She felt herself falling into a darkness that had no bottom. But just before she fell completely, she felt something else, a surge of strength that was not her own. Ancient. Vast. As if all the ancestors whose children she had saved were reaching through time to pour their own life force into her hands. The darkness inside Dubum shattered like clay dropped on stone. The child gasped, a huge sucking breath that sounded like someone breaking the surface of water after nearly drowning. His eyes flew open. Color rushed back into his gray skin. "Mother," he whispered. The chief's first wife screamed with joy and threw herself across her son, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. The compound erupted in celebration. People shouted praises to the gods. The chief himself stood stunned, staring at Ngozi as if seeing her for the first time. But Ngozi heard none of it. She had collapsed beside the child's mat, unconscious, her skin pale as moonlight, her breathing so shallow it was almost invisible. "She is dying," someone whispered. And perhaps she was. Perhaps healing the chief's son had finally drained the last drop from her well. Perhaps she had given everything and now had nothing left for herself. Obi pushed through the crowd and gathered his wife into his arms. Her body was cold. Her lips were blue. She looked like a person who had walked too far from the world of the living and might not find her way back. "No," Obi whispered, tears streaming down his face. "No, no, no, Ngozi, come back to me, please." The celebration around them began to quiet as people realized what had happened. The healer who had saved so many had finally saved herself into the arms of death. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more tales by Sammuff. Will Ngozi survive? What will happen now that she has saved the chief's son at the cost of her own life? Comment below with your thoughts and tell us, would you sacrifice everything for others the way Ngozi has? The tree that gives all its fruit in one season will stand bare when winter comes, but the tree that knows when to rest will feed many generations. Ancient wisdom. Ngozi walked through a place that was neither day nor night, neither earth nor sky. She was aware of her body, could feel her arms and legs, her beating heart, but when she looked down, she saw nothing. No ground beneath her feet, no feet at all, just consciousness floating in a vast, silvery emptiness that seemed to stretch in all directions at once. "Am I dead?" she whispered, and her voice echoed back to her like ripples on still water. "Not yet," came a familiar voice. Ngozi turned, or thought she turned. Movement here was more intention than action and saw Nnemjibika. But like in her previous dream, the old woman was transformed. She stood tall and radiant, wrapped in white cloth that seemed woven from starlight itself. Around her floated other figures, translucent and shimmering ancestors, Ngozi somehow knew, though she recognized none of their faces. "Where am I?" Ngozi asked. "In the space between," Nnemjibika replied, moving closer without seeming to walk. "The place where souls decide whether to continue forward or turn back. You stand at the crossroads, child, and you must choose your path." "I do not understand." Nnemjibika gestured, and suddenly Ngozi could see through the silver mist. Below, or perhaps beside, or within, direction had no meaning here. She saw her own body lying on a mat in the chief's compound. Obi knelt beside her, his face wet with tears. The medicine man chanted over her with his sacred rattles. Women she had healed wept openly. Even the chief looked shaken, standing over her still form with an expression of genuine distress. "You gave too much," Nnemjibika said softly. "You poured yourself out completely, and now your spirit does not know if it should return to that empty vessel or continue on to join us." "I had to save the child," Ngozi said. "I could not let him die." "Could not or would not?" One of the ancestor spirits spoke now, a woman whose face seemed to shift between young and old. "There is a difference, child. One is necessity, the other is choice." Ngozi felt tears on her face, if she still had a face. "How could I choose to let a child die when my hands could save him? How could I live with that?" "How will others live without you?" another ancestor asked, his voice deep as thunder. "You think your gift is only for healing bodies. Look again." The vision shifted. Ngozi saw a young girl she had healed 3 weeks ago, the daughter of a widow who had no other children. The girl was now laughing with her mother, both of them tending their small farm. Then the scene changed. The girl was grown, surrounded by her own children, who were surrounded by theirs. Dozens of lives, hundreds of lives, all springing from that single moment when Ngozi had healed a sick child. "Your gift creates ripples," Nnemjibika explained. "Each person you save goes on to create life, to touch others, to matter in ways that echo through generations. But if you die now, all those future ripples die with you. The children you would have healed next week, next month, next year, they will die. The families who would have found hope through you will remain in despair. Is that the sacrifice you wish to make?" Ngozi felt the weight of those words like stones placed on her chest. "But I am so tired," she whispered. "I have nothing left to give." "Because you have been giving from the wrong place," the thunder-voiced ancestor said. "You give from yourself, from your own life force. That well has limits, but there is another source, child, one that never runs dry." "I do not know what you mean." Nnemjibika took Ngozi's hand, and in that touch, Ngozi felt it. A vast reservoir of power that was not her own but was somehow available to her. It felt like standing at the edge of the ocean and finally realizing that the small cup she had been using to carry water was unnecessary. She could let the ocean itself flow through her. "The gift was never yours alone," Nnemjibika said. It belongs to the ancestors, to the earth, to the spirit that moves through all living things. You were meant to be a channel, not a source. When you heal, you should draw from this greater power, not from your own limited strength. That is the lesson you were meant to learn. That is why you had to reach this edge, so you could finally understand the true nature of your gift. The silver mist around them began to shimmer with colors Ngozi had no names for. She felt the vast power Nne spoke of, felt how it wanted to flow through her, had always wanted to flow through her. But she had been trying too hard, gripping too tight, giving from her own reserves instead of simply opening herself to be a vessel. If I go back, Ngozi said slowly, will I be able to do this, to heal without dying? If you learn to let go, Nne replied. If you understand that the power is not yours to control but yours to allow. Can you do that, Ngozi? Can you stop trying to be the source and simply become the river? Ngozi thought of all the people who still needed healing. All the children who might die without her touch. All the mothers who would weep as she had wept, alone and hopeless. She thought of Obi's face, wet with tears, and how he had stood by her even when the village mocked her, even when she could give him no children, even when she poured herself into strangers until nothing remained for him. Yes, she said, I will learn, I will try. Then it is time, Nne said. But know this, child, your greatest test is still ahead. The gift you carry will demand more from you than you can imagine. Not your life this time, but something perhaps more precious. Are you willing to pay that price when it comes due? What price? Ngozi asked, fear creeping into her voice. But the ancestors were already fading, and the silver mist was darkening, and Ngozi felt herself being pulled backward, downward, inward back into the world of flesh and breath and beating hearts. Ngozi's eyes opened to firelight and voices. She breathes, someone shouted. The healer breathes. Faces crowded above her, Obi's most prominent, his expression transformed from grief to joy so suddenly it almost looked like pain. Behind him, the chief, the medicine man, a cluster of women who had been weeping moments before. Ngozi, Obi sobbed, pulling her into his arms. I thought I had lost you, I thought. I am here, Ngozi whispered, her voice raw as if she had been screaming for hours. I am still here. But even as she spoke, she felt different. The exhaustion that had plagued her for weeks was gone, replaced by something else, a sense of openness, of connection to something vast and eternal. She could feel the power Nne had shown her, that endless ocean waiting just beyond the edge of her consciousness, waiting to be channeled. The chief knelt beside where she lay, a proud man kneeling. That alone told Ngozi how serious this moment was. You saved my son, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And you nearly died doing it. I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid with gold or land or influence. But I will try. Name what you want, healer. Anything in my power to grant is yours. Ngozi looked at him, then at the crowd gathered around her. She saw Obiagely standing at the back, her face twisted with an emotion Ngozi could not quite identify. Not joy at her survival. Not quite hatred either. Something more complex, something dangerous. I want nothing, my chief, Ngozi said softly, except perhaps understanding. Understanding. I am not a witch, Ngozi said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I did not bargain with dark spirits for this gift. I do not know why the gods chose to give me healing hands while leaving my womb empty. I do not know why some blessings come wrapped in the shape of curses. But I know this. I was given this gift for a reason, and I will use it for as long as I am able, not for payment, not for praise, but because it is what I am meant to do. Silence fell over the compound. Then the chief nodded slowly. Let it be known throughout Umuada and all the villages beyond, he declared, his voice ringing with authority. Ngozi, wife of Obi, is under my protection. Anyone who calls her witch, anyone who speaks against her, anyone who harms her in any way will answer to me personally. She is healer. She is blessed. And she has saved my son's life. That is all anyone needs to know. The crowd murmured their agreement, some enthusiastically, others like Obiagely with poorly concealed reluctance. But the chief's word was law. And with that declaration, Ngozi's position in the village shifted from suspicious to sacred in a single moment. 3 days later, Ngozi sat by the stream where Nneni Mgbike had first spoken to her. Her strength had returned, faster than should have been possible. But it was not just physical strength. She felt different inside, more grounded, more connected, more aware of the vast power that flowed through all living things. She had spent the past 3 days practicing what the ancestors had taught her. Instead of pushing her own life force into sick people, she learned to simply open herself and let the greater power flow through. It was like the difference between trying to create wind by waving your arms and simply opening a window to let the breeze in. The healings now left her tired but not devastated, drained but not destroyed. She could help 5, 10, 15 people in a day and still have energy to cook dinner for Obi, still have the strength to walk home on her own feet. But she also understood what Nneni Mgbike had warned her about. The greatest test was still coming. There would be a price to pay, and it would not be her life. What else could the gods possibly ask of her? What price could be higher than the one she had already nearly paid? As she sat pondering these questions, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a young woman approaching, not from Umuada, but from one of the distant villages. The woman's wrapper was dusty from travel, and her face was desperate with hope and fear mixed together. "Are you Ngozi?" the woman asked. "The healer?" "I am." The woman fell to her knees. "Please, you must come with me, my village. There is a sickness spreading. Already 10 people have died and more fall ill every day. The elders say it is a curse. The medicine men say it is the anger of the gods. But I heard about you, about what you can do. Please, we are 2 days' journey from here, but we will pay whatever you ask. We will give you anything. Just please, save my village." Ngozi looked at the desperate woman, then at the path that led back to her compound where Obi was waiting, where comfort and relative safety existed. She thought of the warning the ancestors had given her. She thought of the price she would have to pay. But she also thought of 10 dead and more dying, of children burning with fever, of mothers weeping over small, still bodies. "I will come," Ngozi said, standing. "But I take no payment except gratitude. Wait here while I tell my husband." As she walked back to her compound, Ngozi did not see Obiageli watching from the shadows, her face set in an expression of grim determination. The chief's protection had made Ngozi untouchable in Umuada, but there were other ways to remove an inconvenient woman, other paths to power, other prices to be paid. And Obiageli, consumed by jealousy and fear of Ngozi's growing influence, had just decided which path she would take. Obi stood in their compound, pounding yam for the evening meal. When he saw Ngozi's face, he immediately put down the pestle. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Ngozi said, but her voice was uncertain. "There is a village 2 days from here, a plague, many dying, they need me." 2 days, Obi's face darkened. "That is far, Ngozi, too far, and you only just recovered from nearly dying yourself. Send them to another healer. Surely you do not have to." "There is no other healer," Ngozi interrupted gently. "You know this. The medicine men cannot stop a plague, only I can." "And what if it kills you this time? What if you go to this village and give everything again, and this time there are no ancestors to pull you back? What then? Do I bury my wife because she could not say no to strangers?" Ngozi took his hands in hers. She saw the fear in his eyes, the love, the exhaustion of being married to a woman who belonged not to him alone, but to anyone who needed her. "I must go," she said softly. "I cannot explain why, I only know that I must, but I promise you this, I will come back. I have learned to protect myself now. I will not die saving them." "What good is a wife who is never home?" Obi asked, his voice breaking. "What good is a healer who saves everyone except her own marriage?" The words struck Ngozi like a physical blow, because they were true. In all her healing, in all her giving, she had not noticed how much Obi had sacrificed, how lonely he had become, how he had faded into the background of her life while she tended to everyone else's emergencies. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Obi, I am so sorry. I do not know how to be both the woman you need and the healer others require. I do not know how to. He pulled her close, cutting off her words. I know, he said into her hair. I know you must go, I have always known. From the moment your gift awakened, I knew I would have to share you with the world. Sometimes I wish the world would give you back to me, even for a day. They stood there, holding each other as the sun set, and the cooking fire burned low, and the woman from the distant village waited by the stream. And somewhere in the darkness, Obiageli smiled, because the plan she had set in motion was already bearing fruit. Ngozi would go to that distant village. She would be far from the chief's protection, far from witnesses, far from anyone who could stop what Obiageli had arranged to happen there. Sometimes, the most effective way to destroy someone was not to attack them directly. It was to let their own goodness lead them into a trap. The journey to the distant village took 2 full days, just as the woman had said. Her name was Adana, and as they walked, she told Ngozi about the plague that had descended on her village like a curse from angry gods. It had started with the children, high fevers, terrible coughing, bodies too weak to stand. Then it spread to the adults. The village healer had tried every herb, every ritual, every prayer. Nothing worked. The death count grew daily. We call the village Nkwo, Adana said as they crossed a stream on the 2nd day. It is small, only 30 compounds, but we are good people. We do not deserve this suffering. Ngozi listened, her healer's mind already working through possibilities. A plague that started with children and spread to adults. High fever and coughing. It sounded like something she had encountered before, but worse, stronger, as if the normal sickness had somehow been amplified. They arrived at Nkwo just as the sun was setting on the 2nd day. Smoke rose from cooking fires, but the village was eerily quiet. No children playing in the compounds. No women laughing at the stream. No men returning from the farms with songs on their lips. Just silence, heavy and oppressive, like a blanket smothering the land. The village chief, a bent old man named Akoro, met them at the entrance. His eyes were hollow with grief and exhaustion. You are the healer from Umuada, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I am Ngozi. I have come to help. Help, the old man repeated, and something like a bitter laugh escaped his throat. Forgive me, but we have been waiting for help for 3 weeks. 17 people are dead. 20 more are dying. If you can truly help, then please, begin now, before there is no one left to save. Ngozi was taken to a large hut where the sick had been gathered. The smell hit her before she even entered, the sharp, sour smell of sickness and death mixed together. Inside, people lay on mats, some unconscious, some moaning softly, some staring at the ceiling with eyes that had already given up hope. Children, mothers, fathers, elders. The plague had not discriminated. Ngozi knelt beside the first patient, a small girl no older than 5. She placed her hands on the child's burning forehead and opened herself to that vast reservoir of power the ancestors had shown her. She felt it flow through her, cool and clear as water from a mountain spring. But something was wrong. The sickness resisted, not like before, when she had struggled because she was using her own limited strength. This was different. The plague seemed to have a will of its own, a darkness that pushed back against her healing light. Ngozi frowned and pushed deeper, letting more power flow through her. The child's fever broke, and she gasped a clear breath, but the effort required was 3 times what it should have been. She moved to the next patient. Same resistance, same unnatural darkness wrapped around the sickness. By the time she had healed 10 people, Ngozi was troubled. This was not a natural plague. Someone had done this. Someone had twisted a normal illness into something dark and deliberate. But who? And why would anyone curse an innocent village? She worked through the night, healing every person in that hut. By dawn, all 20 of the dying were sleeping peacefully, their fevers broken, their breathing clear. The villagers wept with gratitude. Chief Akoro fell at her feet, thanking her as if she were a goddess. But Ngozi felt a growing unease in her chest. Something about this entire situation felt orchestrated. The timing, the specific village, the way the plague had been so perfectly designed to require her help. It felt like a stage, set for a performance she had not agreed to give. On the third morning in Nkwo, as Ngozi was preparing to return home to Obi, a messenger arrived from Umuada. He was young, barely 15, and he had clearly run the entire 2-day journey without stopping. His feet were bleeding. His face was gray with exhaustion. He collapsed at Ngozi's feet, gasping for breath. "What is wrong?" Ngozi asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "What has happened?" The boy looked up at her with eyes full of tears. "Your husband," he managed to say between gasps. "Obi, he has fallen gravely ill, the same sickness, the same plague. It appeared the morning after you left. Already 5 people in Umuada are sick. The chief sent me to bring you back, he says. He says you must come now or Obi will die." The world tilted beneath Ngozi's feet. Obi, her patient, loving husband who had stood by her through everything, who had held her when she wept, who had accepted her gift even though it meant sharing her with the world. He was dying while she was here, 2 days away, healing strangers. "I must go," Ngozi said, already gathering her things. "I must go now." But Chief Akaro stepped forward, his face twisted with fear. "Wait. If you leave now, who will protect us if the sickness returns? We need you here, we need." "My husband is dying," Ngozi shouted, her voice breaking. "I have healed your village, now I must save my own family." She turned to leave, but something made her stop. Some instinct, some whisper of warning from that vast power she had learned to channel. She looked at the messenger boy more carefully, his bleeding feet, his exhausted face, but his eyes were clear. Not the eyes of someone who had just witnessed tragedy, more like the eyes of someone delivering lines in a play. "Who sent you?" Ngozi asked quietly. "The chief, I told you." "No," Ngozi interrupted, her healer's intuition suddenly sharp as a blade. "Who really sent you? Because if Obi was truly dying, the chief would have sent an elder, not a boy. And if people were truly sick in Umuada, he would have sent details about their symptoms so I could prepare the proper herbs. But you gave me nothing, just fear and urgency. So I ask again, who sent you?" The boy's face changed. The mask of exhaustion slipped, and underneath was something else. Fear, guilt. I was paid," he whispered. "A woman from your village. She paid me 10 cowries to run here and deliver that message. She said it was a test, that she wanted to see if you would abandon one village to save another, she said." "Who?" Ngozi's voice was ice. "What was her name?" "Obiagely," the boy said, and the name fell between them like a stone. Everything clicked into place. The plague in this village, not natural but created, designed to pull Ngozi away from Umuada. The message about Obi, a lie meant to make her panic, to make her choose between her husband and these villagers. It was all a trap, all a scheme to destroy her reputation, to prove she was selfish, to turn people against her. But why? What did Obiagely gain from this? Then Ngozi understood. Obiagely did not want her dead. She wanted her disgraced. If Ngozi abandoned the village she had just healed, word would spread. The healer who saved strangers but would not save her own husband. The woman who chose fame over family. Her gift would become a curse in people's eyes. The chief's protection would mean nothing if the people themselves turned against her. And if she stayed, if she called the lie and remained in Nkwo, then Obiagely would say she had abandoned Umuada in its time of need, that she cared more for distant villages than her own home. Either choice would destroy her. It was a perfect trap. What would you do in Ngozi's position? How do you choose between family and duty? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Tales by Sammuff for more wisdom stories that challenge the soul. Ngozi stood in the center of Nkwo village, surrounded by people she had saved, while 2 days away her husband waited, believing her love for him was as strong as her gift for healing. The boy messenger waited for her response. Chief Akora watched her carefully. Adana, who had brought her here, looked at her with a mixture of hope and fear. And in that moment, Ngozi felt the weight of the choice the ancestors had warned her about. The price that would be demanded, not her life, something more precious. She closed her eyes and reached for that vast reservoir of power, that ocean of wisdom that flowed through all things. She asked for guidance. She asked for clarity. She asked for a way forward that would not destroy everything she had built. And slowly, like dawn breaking over the horizon, the answer came. "Bring me the fastest runner in this village," Ngozi said, her voice calm and certain. "Someone who can make the journey to Umuada in a day and a half if he pushes hard." A young man stepped forward. "I can do it." Ngozi pulled a small cloth pouch from her wrapper. Inside were herbs she had prepared for emergencies. "Take this to my husband, Obi. Tell him to brew it exactly as I describe. Tell him I know he is not sick, but that others in Umuada might soon be if this plague spreads. Tell him," her voice softened. "Tell him I trust him to protect our village until I return, and tell him I love him." She turned to Chief Akaro. "I will stay here for 3 more days to ensure the plague does not return. Then I will go home. This is my choice. Not because I was manipulated into it, but because it is right." The young runner took the herbs and left immediately. Ngozi watched him go, her heart aching but her spirit calm. Obiageli had tried to trap her with an impossible choice. But Ngozi had found a third path, the path of trust, of wisdom, of refusing to let fear dictate her actions. The trap had failed, but Ngozi knew this was not over. Obiageli would try again, and next time the price might be higher than even destiny could pay. When the gods close one door, they are not punishing you. They are redirecting you to the palace you were always meant to enter. Final wisdom. 6 moons had passed since Ngozi escaped Obiageli's trap. She returned to Umuada to find Obi healthy and the village free of plague. Her message and herbs had arrived in time, and the few who showed symptoms were quickly healed. The runner she sent had also carried the truth about Obiageli's deception, and the chief's fury had been terrible to behold. Obiageli was stripped of her position as the chief's wife and sent back to her father's village in disgrace. Some said it was too harsh a punishment for jealousy, but the chief declared that anyone who would create suffering in innocent villages just to destroy another person's reputation deserved no mercy. Now, as Ngozi sat by the stream where this journey had begun, she reflected on everything that had changed. Her gift had grown stronger. She could heal dozens of people without exhaustion, channeling that vast ocean of power the ancestors had shown her. Villages from 3 days' journey away sought her help. The chief had built her a special compound where the sick could come and rest while she tended them. But the question that had haunted her for 8 years remained unanswered. Why had the gods given her this gift while keeping her womb closed? What was the purpose of being blessed and cursed at the same time? "Still thinking too much, I see," came a familiar voice. Ngozi turned to see Nneni Mgbike approaching, leaning on her walking stick. The old woman settled beside her with a satisfied sigh. "Mama," Ngozi greeted her with respect, "I have not seen you since." "Since you nearly died saving the chief's son." "Yes, child." "I stayed away deliberately. You needed to learn some lessons on your own." Nneni Mgbike studied Ngozi's face. "And have you learned them?" "I have learned to be a channel, not a source. I have learned that my gift comes with responsibility and cost. I have learned that jealousy can be more dangerous than any plague." Ngozi paused. "But I still do not understand why. Why was I chosen? Why must I be Barren to be a healer?" Nneni Mgbike smiled, that mysterious expression that held centuries of wisdom. "Tell me, child, how many people have you healed in the past 6 moons?" I do not keep count." "I do," the old woman said. 347 people, 347 lives saved, 347 families kept whole. And do you know what each of those people calls you when they speak of you to their children?" Ngozi shook her head. "Mama," Nneni Mgbike said softly. "They call you Mama Ngozi, the mother who heals, the mother who saves, the mother who gives life back to the dying. You have 347 children, Ngozi, more than any woman in the history of Umuada, more than most women could birth in 10 lifetimes." The words struck Ngozi like lightning. She had been so focused on what she did not have that she had failed to see what she possessed. Every child she saved became, in some way, hers. Every life she restored carried a piece of her love within it. "But it is not the same," Ngozi whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. They are not truly mine. They do not call me mother at home. They do not carry my blood. No, Nnmgbk agreed. It is not the same. It is greater. Blood ties bind you to one family. But you are tied to hundreds. To thousands if you continue. Your womb was kept empty so your arms could be wide enough to embrace entire villages. Your ability to give birth was traded for the power to give life back to those from whom it was being stolen. She reached out and took Ngozi's hand. This was always your destiny, child. From the moment you were born, the gods knew what you would become. That is why they made you wait 8 years. Not as punishment, but as preparation. You had to feel the pain of barrenness so deeply that when your true gift awakened, you would understand the pain of every mother who watches her child suffer. You had to be mocked and scorned so you would have compassion for all who are judged for things beyond their control. You had to be emptied so you could be filled with something greater than any one life could hold. Ngozi wept freely now, years of shame and confusion pouring out of her like poison from a wound finally lanced. All this time, she had thought her barrenness was something separate from her gift. But it was not. They were the same thing, two sides of one destiny. The price, Ngozi said, remembering the ancestors' warning. You said I would have to pay a price. Was this it? Accepting that I will never have children of my own? No, Nnmgbk said, and her voice grew serious. The price is this. You must choose here and now to accept your destiny fully. To stop mourning what you do not have and celebrate what you do. Because if you cannot make peace with your path, the gift will begin to fade. The gods give gifts only to those who can carry them without resentment. So tell me, Ngozi, can you accept being mother to many instead of mother to one? Can you see your barrenness, not as a curse, but as the very thing that made you capable of your blessing? The question hung in the air between them like a sacred offering. Ngozi thought of little Chidinma, whose life she had saved, who now ran through the village singing. She thought of the chief's son Dubum, who had been given back from the edge of death. She thought of 347 faces, 347 families, 347 reasons to be grateful for hands that could heal even if her womb remained empty. She thought of Obi, who had loved her through everything, who had learned to share her with the world because he understood that some people are not meant to belong to just one family. And slowly, like the sun rising after the longest night, peace settled over her spirit. Yes, Ngozi said, her voice clear and strong. I accept my destiny. I accept that my barrenness is not my tragedy but my training. I accept that I am mother to many and that this is not less than being mother to one. It is different, and it is exactly what I was meant to be. The moment the words left her mouth, something shifted in the air around them. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and fresh rain. The water in the stream seemed to sparkle with light that had not been there moments before. Nnmgbk stood, and once again she appeared as she had in Ngozi's visions, tall, radiant, ageless. Then the final blessing is yours, the old woman said. Not a child of your body, but something greater. Look. She gestured toward the path leading to the village, and Ngozi saw them coming. Dozens of people, hundreds, all those she had healed over the past moons, walking toward her with gifts and songs and flowers. Children ran ahead of their parents, calling out Mama Ngozi, Mama Ngozi, with voices full of joy and love. Behind them came Obi, his face shining with pride and love. And beside him walked the chief, carrying in his arms a beautiful carved staff. We have come, the chief announced, to honor the greatest mother our village has ever known. The woman who teaches us that family is not only blood, that love is not only biology, that sometimes the gods bless us in ways we do not expect because they see futures we cannot imagine. He placed the staff in Ngozi's hands. It was carved with symbols of healing, with images of children and mothers and hands reaching toward each other. At the top was inscribed, Mother to all, blessed among women. Ngozi stood surrounded by her people, her children in spirit if not in flesh, and finally understood. Her barrenness had never been a curse. It had been the empty cup that the universe could fill with an ocean. It had been the preparation for a blessing too large to fit in one womb, one home, one ordinary life. She had been mocked for being barren. But destiny had shocked them all by revealing that sometimes the greatest mothers are those who carry no child in their belly, but carry thousands in their heart. And as the sun set over Umuada, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Ngozi smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since she had been married 8 years ago. She was not barren. She had never been barren. She had simply been waiting to give birth to her true purpose. And that purpose would echo through generations, long after her body returned to the earth. Thank you for joining us on Ngozi's journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more tales by Sammuff. Remember, sometimes what looks like a curse is actually destiny preparing you for a blessing too big to fit in what you thought you wanted. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Where are you watching from? Comment below and become part of our global family. Moral of the story: not all blessings look like blessings at first. Sometimes what we think we lack is exactly what prepares us for the greater purpose destiny has in store. The gods do not make mistakes. They simply see further than we can. Trust the journey, even when it takes you through valleys of pain, because those valleys often lead to mountains of purpose you never knew existed. The seed that refuses to sprout in haste will become the mightiest tree. Remember this always.